7 million men. That's the number that Washington Post is talking about that a lot of people are not paying attention to. 7 million men, a very staggering number of men, have literally vanished. And you might be asking yourself, where have they vanished to? Men of prime age, between the ages of 25 and 44, your prime, they've just gone missing. They're not in the workforce. No, they didn't get fired. They didn't even enter in the first place. They've quit friendships. They've quit relationships. And they've just vanished, but they've gone somewhere. Because when there's a vacuum, definitely that vacuum gets filled, as we can very quickly see when there are issues in society. We have a lot of companies that come out in order to fill these gaps and actually deal with these issues. And this for me is alarming because it's not necessarily an issue of unemployment, but it looks like a staggering number of, I think, the most important male age in society, especially in Western society, have lost one thing, which I think is the most important thing, and that is hope. We saw this happen in Japan. We saw this happen in South Korea. We saw this happen in Italy. We're seeing it at a very staggering, fast increasing rate in the United States. Men quitting. But what we also did see was in societies that saw this as an issue and put structures in place in order to ensure that this wasn't the case. For example, in Switzerland, in Germany, there were clear paths and vocational trainings and programs specifically designed and established in order to make sure that young men had some sort of stepping stone in order to be able to compete economically. Because then when you compete economically, you can think of having a family. When you have a family, you can then think of just greater ambitions and you have your why. Now, here's the amazing thing. Those of you that are married right now, that have children to protect, that have families to protect, you already have something, you're already a step ahead of the game. Now, I'm not saying if you're just in a relationship, obviously, if you're in a good one, if you're in a healthy one, that's a step ahead of the game. But now, this is not coincidence. It seems like this is by design, because what it turns out is that the more isolated you are, the more alone you are, the easier it is to control, the easier it is to manipulate, and the easier it is to determine where your life and outcome goes. But if you have a family, you become an infrastructure. You become basically the system that is actually holding society together. The weight falls on those that already have families, and you absorb the pressure more because now a lot of men have checked out. And so now marriage is not just a thing that people do. It's not just a cultural thing anymore. It's actually a defense. And so I thought that this was pretty interesting and I wanted to have a conversation about it. And when I was reading this article and even watching a couple of videos, there was a lot of hope and despondence in the conversation. Well, why be part of a society if the society doesn't want you? Embrace solitude. Well, the court system doesn't favor you. There's a lot of things that are not in your favor. But even though I cannot attest to that and I can agree with some of those sentiments, the real issue is not necessarily that, oh, well, the system is against you. The real issue is not even necessarily marriage more than it is it about control? The more controlled people are and the more they have nothing to live for, they're more akin to go and perhaps fight in wars or just acquiesce to anything that just seems to go. Because where are they disappearing to? They're disappearing to algorithms, they're disappearing to gaming, they're disappearing to apps. And that give them a false sense of reality. And then when they come back out into the real world, bingo, reality hits. And the unfortunate thing about this is that depression and suicide rates are increasing at a faster rate among younger men. And I think this is pretty heartbreaking, considering that every single person is fearfully and wonderfully made with so much potential and hope to actually be something great. So for me, I think that this is really something that we should be concerned about, not just because, oh, it might just lead to population decline, which we've seen that it does, but what does this do to society? I think that it just creates an opportunity to allow for technology to really have its free reign amongst us. And so when I follow the money and I follow this conversation all the way to the end, I start realizing that perhaps this isn't coincidence. Perhaps this was just a very well thought out, cleverly engineered system. And the way to basically stand against that system, in my opinion, is marriage, is relationship, is community. So the three things that I want to get into, if you find yourself in a situation where you find that you're one of these men, you're one of these men that have checked out, and it's not because you've decided to, it's actually because we can just see society is creating more and more a space where people aren't needed just in general, where the things that are the bedrock of society, things that keep people connected, things that make people happy, are being stripped away in large numbers, either through monogamy, oligarchy, or through court systems, or through laws, or just through social media, unspoken, unrealistic pressures on people. Now, this concerns me because some of you may be married, you may have brothers, you may have sons. And what does this mean for those children growing up in a society where you'll just have a bunch of checked out men? I wonder, and I really think that this is something that we should not just have a look over, because when we come together, I think that we are stronger together. So the first thing that I would encourage you to do, the first three things that I would encourage you to do, is just also become strategic. Just if you're in marriage already, anchor in and be more intentional about that relationship, because that is going to be your defense. You already have your defense. You already have your why, right? Your children are growing up in a world where fewer men and men choose to stay. So that means that all the pressure is actually going to be on those who have chosen not to check out, or who have been fortunate to be in a position where they haven't been squeezed out. And so to understand that your marriage is not just a personal choice anymore, that right now, especially in modern society, it's actually a cultural act. And that every day you're showing up, being present, you're basically proving the system wrong, and you're starting to slowly be the cornerstone and the bedrock of society, whether you like it or not, right? Secondly, get your financial situation in order. I know that it's easier said than done, and I know you might be wondering, well, how do we do that in this dispensation? And there's a lot to do right now in this dispensation. You can use AI not as a disadvantage, but to your advantage, as a leverage to start creating things, but start becoming more aggressive about multiple streams of income. This is absolutely a non-negotiable, right? And if you have a supportive partner, both of you can really leverage this kind of partnership to really build something solid. And think of it this way, not just for you and yours, but there are going to be men who are going to be needing you, and who are going to be a step where you used to be. And you're going to be their voice of hope. You're going to be their voice of reason. I think that it's about time that we stop looking at our lives just as us. Anytime we are here today and we are enjoying things because of people who went before us, who didn't just think of themselves. And so right now, your relationship, your marriage, you being a stand upright guy is no longer about you. Society is going to be drawing and pulling a lot from you. So you're going to have to start thinking of multiple streams of income. Start thinking bigger than yourself, even thinking of creating communities and societies and where men can just come and have a safe space. Okay. And third, brotherhood. That's the segue into my third thing. If you're in a relationship, if you're married in or in your stable relationship, brotherhood could not be more important at this time, because as we can see, everything that we're seeing now is by design. And so it's not going to be a surprise to me. Well, actually, let me not say it's not a surprise to me, because this was the first attack, which was marriage. And so you're going to need structures and defenses and space and brotherhood to help you be strong when the storms come and hit, or when the attacks come towards your marriage. But these are just things that I just wanted to speak about. This is what has just been on my mind lately. And it's just very interesting. It's staggering that 7 million, and this is just the ones that we know about. What about those that are in relationships and are feeling this way? Let us do things to actually start really building strong relationships as a form of resistance, and because it can work. It can work. We know in Germany, we know in Switzerland, it's worked, where they've actually actively done something about this. And, pretending like this is a real situation and it's just going to go away. It's not going to go away. And then and then insisting on traditional and cultural things that used to become again is also not going to work. Things have just changed. It's just traditions is really just peer. And I've heard someone say this before. Sometimes traditions is really peer pressure from dead people. We are living in times completely different to our parents. Right now, young men literally have to work 3 times as hard to make a third of what their parents made. It's absolutely absurd to consider that what worked back then is going to work now. So I'm not suggesting at all that typical traditional or cultural approaches to things is the solution, but absolutely we need to be acknowledging that this is a real issue and actually having practical solutions to it. And I think that the first step is that the economic factor and men being able to participate economically is absolutely pivotal. Now, having made this video doesn't mean that women aren't important. I'm not saying that. I always just feel like I have to have a disclaimer, because every time you want to, speak to people, we always get so triggered. We just triggered. We like a smart screen. You just like touch screens, right? But right now, I just wanted to speak about this because it was something that was pretty close to my heart, because I do have, men in my life that I do value and really appreciate and admire quite a lot. And I can't imagine what it must feel like for somebody who really wants to be a part and good and provide and just be there and show up to a world that doesn't want them to. And, when you have sons, and if you have sons, I'm sure this is a concern, because you've brought the children up in this world and you never thought that they would have to grow up in a society like this. And what does that look like for them? It's a question that as a parent, you will never be able to ignore and wish away. And so because of that, I think instead of just being afraid and just having conversations about it, let us become more intentional about the repair. Anyway, I speak much, but thank you for joining me on this live. And I look forward to hearing your comments about what you think. Do you have a very helpful helpmate? Has that helped you through this time? If you are a male that you are alone, what do you think would be a very good solution for you? Until next time, bye-bye.